Welcome to the Untold Story podcast, everybody. I'm Martha McCallum. Great to have you with us today, and I'm really glad to have Governor Doug Burgum of North Dakota with me today. And Governor, welcome back to the story.
Well, Martha, great to be back with you.
So, you know, I was thinking about this. The last time we talked was in the middle of the Republican nominating process. So when you look back on that, how do you feel about the fact that you went through that process and, you know, are governor, of course, of your great state? You know, where do you feel you are right now in life and in politics?
Well, I feel great about the whole process because the First Lady and I had an opportunity crisscrossing this country to meet people that cared so deeply about the country, because those are the people you meet, the ones that are people that have met every presidential candidate in both parties for the last 30 years. There's real people like that, and they're there not because they're chasing autographs. They just really care deeply about their family, their communities, their kids, their grandkids. And that part was inspiring because you get to see stuff that you're not seeing on the news every day about what's really going on in people's lives. And I think it was very motivating because, of course, we were running and talking about the economy, about energy policy, and how that's intertwined with national security, and everything that we talked about and warned people about last June, unfortunately under Joe Biden, have all come true. And it's part of the reason why right now that we're so engaged, as a governor, because the most important thing for every citizen in my state and for everybody in this country is that we get President Trump back in the White House and get real leadership for this country again. I do want to talk to you about energy because the other day you were on America's Newsroom and Dana and I were hosting, and then, as often happens, which is why I love podcasts, after our conversation we started talking about energy, and I was really interested in what you had to say about what's really going on in this country with regard to energy, and I want to ask you about that in just a moment. But, after having gone through the nomination process and running for president and leaving that race, did it leave you with a hunger to go back? Do you still want to be president? Well, we made a decision after that, when we stopped campaigning for president. We could have run for another term in North Dakota, but decided not to do that. And part of that was because I had an opportunity as a governor to serve under President Trump when he was president. That was fantastic. And then the last 3+ years as governor under Joe Biden, my job description is the same, governor of North Dakota. My job is completely different because right now all we do is fight and push back on federal overreach. And when I say overreach, basically there's a limited set of things the federal government's supposed to do, like control the border, that they're not doing. And then there's a whole bunch of other things that the responsibility belongs to the state. But all the mandates and the rules and the red tape and the regulations, and we're fighting 30 different initiatives out of the Biden administration that are coming fast and furious right now. They're trying to get them all out before May 20th. That's the date when the Congressional Review Act will look back. So they're trying to, wire into code, administrative code, a bunch of things that'll actually, kill agriculture, kill energy, destabilize the world. I mean, these are all politically, ideologically driven things that are bad for our economy, bad for Americans, and bad for America's position in the world. So it's a full-time job. And so as a governor, no governor should have to be playing defense against the federal government. But that's what we're doing in North Dakota. And I know that's what lots of other governors are doing right now.
Well, that's very, very interesting. And, I think governors are really on the front lines. You are an executive. You're running a state. It's such a more powerful position, really, in many ways than I think at this point Congress, has a tough time getting much done these days. So explain to everybody, if you could be specific about a couple of examples. What was one way of operating for you as the governor of North Dakota under President Trump, and what's different now? How is it so frustrating for you?
Well, one simple one maybe ties into the protests that are happening today, but when I took office, the Dakota Access Pipeline protest was at full tilt, 10,000 people camping illegally on federal land, 1,100-mile-long pipeline, and 1 mile of it had an intersection with a federal nexus. That's where the protest was. We just completed a trial in federal court. Took us 7 years as the state of North Dakota suing the federal government to get repaid for the law enforcement and cleanup work that we had to do at that camp that was the responsibility of the federal government. And through live depositions, through video depositions, through live testimony and discovery, the case is, judge hasn't ruled, but every day there was more stuff that came out that said the Obama-Biden White House had their thumb on the behalf of the protesters. They were not supporting law enforcement. They weren't supporting the state of North Dakota. And so I'm not at all surprised that people in the news today are saying, oh, there's professional protesters. I mean,
yeah, you're thinking, I knew that all along.
No, I mean, it's a business, and it's just remarkable what happens when you get people, and they show up because all the cameras are there, and then they get all the earned media. They get to tell their side of the story as part of that. But it's a business, and they're out there right now. And of course, the message that they have is astounding because it's a pro-terrorist, it's like the pro-Hamas wing of the Democrat Party, and then Joe Biden is playing to them because he needs their votes. I mean, he's not coming out strongly against this, and he's not been strong in support of Israel. So it's kind of baffling to me because it doesn't matter whether it's energy infrastructure or global affairs like this. The White House is not leading, and that's why I think people are excited that President Trump is out there today doing what he'd be doing every day, which is holding rallies in Wisconsin and Michigan.
Yeah, well, he's not in no court today, so he is packing in a lot today, going to Wisconsin and Michigan, which obviously are two really important states. But back to the other question about what's different in terms of operating as a state under the Trump presidency and the Biden presidency in terms of America's ability to produce its own energy, and how is that stymied under this situation for you in your state?
Well, one of the things that goes on, everybody knows that President Trump was involved in some of the most important tax cuts in our history. But what they didn't see is they had a tremendous success at cutting red tape. So much red tape. And when you cut red tape, then innovation flourishes. And our country's greatness has always depended on innovation. And you can go back to whether it's the agricultural revolution, the technology revolution, putting a man on the moon, doesn't matter. Everything we've done has been about innovation. And the Biden administration, they think they can solve every problem with a one-size-fits-all regulation. They're going to bind every company, every small business, every state, every citizen to a set of rules. And when they do that, then they take our economy and they're just tying not one hand behind the back, sometimes two. And then the net sum of all this is actually a full-on attack on U.S. energy, and whether that's oil and gas or whether that's baseload electricity that we need to touches every citizen in America. They're attacking that under some ideological thing that somehow if we shut that down, we're going to make the planet cleaner. And it's not true, because when you shut down supply from the U.S., which is the cleanest and the best in the world, the demand gets filled by who? Russia, Iran, Venezuela, where Biden has actually lifted the sanctions. So the people that we're fighting these wars against, the reason why we've got protests on campus today is because Iran can fund Hamas. Hamas can attack Israel. I mean, Joe Biden's energy policy was like written by China, written by Russia, and then when he implements it, it leads to literally puts us on the brink of World War III. And all of that back here, we've got, 3 more rules last week dumped on the state of North Dakota that are literally going to be shutting down baseload energy. So what
kind of rules are they?
Well, they have to do with emissions, say from a plant. And some of these are ridiculous. We've got the cleanest air and the cleanest water in the country. We've got plants, baseload energy plants in America that they're measured in parts per billion. I mean, think about that. I mean, an example would be if you had the Astrodome and it had 30 billion ping pong balls in it, because that would, it would take 30 billion ping pong balls, and 30 of those, 1 per billion, is a bad thing. You could go in there and you could bring all your friends and you could eat ping pong balls the rest of your life, and you might never find one of those 30. Well, the new rule that came out last week is they want to go to parts per trillion. They want to take it 30 ping pong balls down to 3, and there's no way to measure it. And so then if you say, does it help health? No. Does it help air quality? No. Help water? No. So then why are you doing it? Well, they're really just trying to drive an ideology where they think there's, we want to have everything be solar and everything be, wind. But those are intermittent sources. And as soon as we're dependent on that, we're dangerously close on our electrical grid. We're going to have brownouts and blackouts all over the place. Hospitals, schools, this building, broadcast, emergency vehicles. I mean, so it's absolutely crazy because.
Well, you hear about that in California where they're telling people, please don't run your drier.
Yes.
At certain times because the grid is so overloaded.
Right.
And it doesn't have to be that way. No. Right. I mean, we have plenty of energy sources, but
we historically have had the strongest and best and most reliable electricity. And the sum of all these rules are driving. Under Joe Biden, inflation's been horrible. Electricity is up 30%, and it'll go to 100%. So I would just say, if you're thinking about buying an EV car and you're worried about the price of gas, well, the price of gas is going to go up under Joe Biden. It has, but the price of electricity could double and double again when we're shutting down supply. I mean, it's like you can't shut down supply and then artificially increase demand with 500,000 charging stations. We'll subsidize EV cars. We'll buy our batteries from China. I mean, literally, this is the energy plan helps China. We spend 40 years getting out from underneath OPEC, and the whole EV strategy, the Biden administration, would make us enslaved to China and their battery production for the next 40 years. It makes no sense.
The Untold Story continues right after this.
So how quickly, I remember, I think one of the very first actions of the Obama administration, like day one or maybe two, was to end the expansion of the Keystone Pipeline. And then I think Trump on day one reopened it. Right. And then Biden, I think on day one or day two, shut it down again. So, let's just imagine that if President Trump wins again, how difficult is it to turn these things on and off? It takes years, doesn't it, to get these things back up and running, these projects?
It does. And I think I'd start with the argument that the federal government should have no ability to put their thumb on whether or not private infrastructure by private companies moving legal products, that they can decide whether or not the permitting process.
The states should decide that?
Well, yeah, the states where the route goes, right, where the permit goes, but it's like Biden putting a pause on LNG export facilities. Right. That is such a slap in the face to every one of our allies. Western Europe, Putin invades Ukraine because all of Western Europe was dependent on his gas. He had them in a stranglehold, all their energy. He knew he could move with impunity. Biden puts a bunch of sanctions on them that are like Swiss cheese. Russia, the price of oil went up after that invasion. Putin has brought in about $700 billion of additional revenue since he started that war. He's making money waging war. Our LNG facilities, if Biden's reelected, that pause becomes permanent. And then again, well, how about Japan, Korea, Philippines, our allies in the Pacific? How about all of Western Europe? The way we get this world stable again is we sell energy, U.S. clean energy, to our friends and allies. We do that as opposed to them buying it from the people that are funding the wars against us, the proxy war with Russia, the proxy war with Iran.
I mean, if you look back through history, there's a nexus of cause underlying almost every large global conflict that goes back to energy. It goes back to fuel. The ability, World War II, the ability to for Japan to get its hands on fuel, right? And the Dutch cut them off. So this prompted their expansion in the area, their aggression in the area. So this is a very, if you learn the lessons of history, you know that being energy independent is a huge national security issue. Right?
Yes, and I want to say thank you. I mean, you understand this. You've written about it in your book about World War II history and in the Pacific, which less people know about. But I mean, the day that they were bombing Pearl Harbor, Japan was running to Indonesia to take over all of Royal Dutch Shell's oil wells.
Exactly right. I want to get back in the couple of minutes that we have left to you and your future. And I asked you before, you once wanted to be president. You ran for the Republican nomination. Is that still a life goal for you? Would you still like to run for president or be president of the United States?
Well, I wanted to say part of the reason we were running was like the people we met, was deep care about this country and the need for the policies that are going to help make America more prosperous and help America make the world be secure. This is what we've done. I mean, peace and prosperity is what every family and everybody dreams about, not just here, but around the world. And whether it's myself or someone else, right now we've got President Trump, who, when he served, we had peace and prosperity. And that's why right now I'm not focused on 4 years or 8 years or anything down the road. I'm just focused on what happens in November, because I know our state, North Dakota, can't take 4 more years of Joe Biden. And the decision to not run again for governor, where we could have run and literally been unopposed in that race.
Right.
Because people love the job that we're doing there, but to say, wow, if I was going to be governor for 4 more years and 4 more years under Joe Biden, I'd rather spend my energy, running to help a Republican. In this case, the nominee is going to be President Trump, and help get somebody back who's proven as a leader to solve the problems that you and I have been talking about on the economy, on the energy. So that's where our focus is right now.
It sort of feels like the list of potential vice presidents kind of rotates around, and people's names kind of rise to the top. And right now, you've been mentioned a fair amount. President Trump has mentioned you. We know he, respects you and likes you. Is that something that you would want to do, and have you expressed that interest to him?
He and I haven't talked about that specifically. He's been very kind about saying, I hope that I'm part of the administration, but there's so many great people that want to serve President Trump, and that's the thing that matters, is that we get a great group of people supporting him. But all of this speculation none of that matters unless he wins. And so that, like, when this stuff comes up, I'm like, these hypotheticals are interesting, but what really matters is having him back in the White House, because I know as a governor on day one, a number of these things, all the rules and mandates I was talking about from the Biden administration, none of that's come from Congress. There hasn't been one of these things that's been a law.
It's all executive order and agencies that have been enabled to make policy and circumvent Congress, which is, one of the large administrative state issues. And there's a big case in the before the Supreme Court with regard to that I think we're going to hear about fairly soon in June, right?
Yes.
Which would make it more difficult for agencies to enact policy without going through Congress. And it really is one of the things that puts a stranglehold on a lot of states and companies, right?
Yes, it does. And so it really matters. If President Trump is back in office, a lot of the stuff can get changed on day one. The Supreme Court case you talked about is critical, because it would help get the balance back of getting the federal government in their lane. And America wins when 50 states are, yes, they're 50 sort of cauldrons of democracy. They're also 50 platforms of innovation, and different states compete for each other. They compete for capital. They compete for companies. They compete for talent. They compete for building who can build the safest cities. All that competition is great. And when we get back to that, and then people realize you can't have a one-size-fits-all for a country that's as large as ours. But this Biden administration, they think every idea that they have is the idea that's best for everybody, and that's just not true.
So last question with regard to 2024. It looks, the polling is still tight in the swing states. Shows Trump ahead in recent polling, but, by a point or two in most of the swing states. So the vice presidential choice often comes down to this issue of, who can help expand that number a little bit here and there. What do you think you would bring to the table that would help get him over the hump?
Well, the only thing I would say is that, I supported President Trump in May of 2016 when I was running for my first time ever for office, the same time he was running the first time for ever office. We both got elected to a position of leadership in the executive branch on the same day. And then I had, a great 4 years working with him in his administration. But both of us had private sector experience coming in. And I think when we look at what's the challenges we're facing with the economy and everything else, I hope whoever he picks is someone who understands the economy and understands how that works in the economy. I also, in tech, I worked in tech for 30 years. I had people working for me in 130 countries. I had people working for me and customers around the world when I was a young person that didn't have the right to vote, that didn't have the right to assemble, didn't have the right to free speech. Of course, they didn't have the right to bear arms. When you're a young person and you're running a global company and you see, wow, America's a special place. So whoever he picks, I think, has got to have, understand the economy, understand the globe and how the global competition is working, and somebody that can help him win. Those are the things. But he's going to pick the person. He's got so many great choices. He'll pick the right person at the right time, and that decision, I'm sure, will come later. But literally for me, I have all these options back in the private sector. I mean, there's things I want him.
You're not worried about having a job.
I'm not worried about having a job. I
am. What else you have? I know he likes and respects you, and you point out the similarities in your background. The other thing you have going for you is that you're one of the people who's not from Florida. So you're from your own state. So that's a big plus as well. Governor Burgum, it's always good to talk to you. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you, Martha.
That's the Untold Story podcast. I look forward to seeing you next time. You've been listening to The Untold Story with Martha McCallum. Don't forget to subscribe on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen. Make sure to rate and review. For more podcasts, go to foxnewspodcast.com. Listen ad-free with the Fox News Podcast Plus subscription on Apple Podcasts, and Amazon Prime members can listen to this show ad-free on the Amazon Music app.